I went from being a stay-at-home mom who taught exercise classes at my local YMCA, a few hours a week. I was home for everything, to never, ever. When I tell you never being home, I was never home. I missed so many, milestone moments in my kids' lives. There were like points in time we were constantly drowning in like housework and laundry and did the kids have everything they need and trying to get them everywhere they needed to go, that people think it's a joke, but it's not a joke. There was times where there were no clean towels, that I had to bust out beach towels. And maybe that's not a big deal for some people because you live someplace warm where there's always beach towels. In Philadelphia, they're packed up and put away for the, spring, winter, and fall. That I would be, busting them out for the kids to take showers because we just were drowning.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Flip That Shit. I'm your host, Stacey Uhrig. My guest today is the lovely Deborah Attella. And for those of you who are not familiar with Flip That Shit, I'm just going to give you a quick 30-second. This podcast came out of my personal point of view, which is there's a gift in every challenge and there's purpose in pain. And I believe that the biggest challenges that we go through in our life are our biggest teachers. And so I'm constantly looking for people that I really don't know that well to come in and share with me a life challenge that ended up bringing them to their knees, that once it was in the rearview mirror, they could see that was actually a huge blessing. And what I love doing is really connecting with people I really don't know well, all across the world, as a way to kind of show we all walk with shit. Every single one of us. Nobody gets the excuse pass for walking with shit. And that's not a negative point of view, but I just believe that life is a series of experiences that are divinely designed for us. And the ones that are the most challenging, the most difficult, the ones that probably create the most pain in our life are the ones that are designed to really help us shift the way we're supposed to shift in this journey of life. And I believe that the other experiences, the ones that we tend to call positive or good, they're respite, man. Like that's where we're filling our bucket. So when I met with Deb, she shared with me a story that was really inspiring to me because I have a very similar story. So we could really jam out on that. But before we get to it, let me tell you a little bit about Deborah. So Deborah Attella is the author of the international best-selling book, Is This Job My Jam? The guide for grown-ups who still don't know what they want to be. She hosts the Atella Like It Is podcast. Deborah is also a Reiki master, certified meditation teacher, and life coach. No surprise. She loves helping people discover ways to live their best lives as she enjoys her life with her family in the suburbs of Philadelphia. So what's also really cool is she's only about 2 hours from me, probably. And we're in a really deep cold snap. I know this is going to go live in the summer, but we're recording in February and it's cold as hell here today, right? So welcome, Deb. It's so nice to have you.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. So whenever I do these podcasts, guys, I have a form that I have my guest fill out, and it says, what's your unique life challenge that you'd be opening to share on air? And what she said was how losing over $300,000 was actually a blessing in disguise. So Deb, knowing that, can you just tell us what happened?
Yes. So my husband and I bought a retail business that I deep down inside knew that we shouldn't buy. But at that point in time, I didn't know the difference between fear and listening to my intuition. So we went ahead and we did it. And it was a complete disaster financially. In every way that it could be a disaster, it was a disaster. We had 3 kids at the time, high school, middle school, elementary school. I went from being a stay-at-home mom who taught exercise classes at my local YMCA, a few hours a week. I was home for everything, to never, ever, when I tell you never being home, I was never home. I missed so many, milestone moments in my kids' lives. There were like points in time, we were constantly drowning in like housework and laundry, and did the kids have everything they need, and trying to get them everywhere they needed to go, that people think it's a joke, but it's not a joke. There was times where there were no clean towels, that I had to bust out beach towels. And maybe that's not a big deal for some people because you live someplace warm where there's always beach towels. In Philadelphia, they're packed up and put away for the, spring, winter, and fall. That I would be, busting them out for the kids to take showers because we just were drowning constantly and trying to keep our heads, above water to run our household and run this business. Now, my husband kept his full-time job because, Stacey, as you know, when you're like starting a business, somebody has to bring some kind of money in. You don't just start off making money. So he was working, 40 plus hours a week and then coming home and trying to do every kid thing alive that I had always taken care of.
Were you happy?
Not fun. No, I cried every single solitary day that we had that business.
So I have a few questions for you.
Okay.
One is, what is the difference between fear and intuition? How do you know the difference?
So fear, your ego, right? Which we all need to have an ego. It keeps us safe. It makes us not jump off of buildings thinking that we can fly. But fear is loud and bossy. And your intuition is firm but soft. It just says no. It doesn't give you all the pros and cons of something. Whereas your fear will be like, well, it'll be good here, but bad here. And, it'll make deals with you. Your ego is just like, no or yes. It's never maybe. It's firm and soft.
So before I get to my next question, when you were talking about drowning, can you paint us a picture of what that looked like? Because I'm sure someone's going to listen and say, well, I often feel like I'm drowning in not being able to keep up. So what did drowning look like for you guys? Describe a typical day if you could.
My husband would leave for work before me. I would get up, get the kids off to school, cry that I wasn't going to see them until, later that night. And maybe not even, they might be in bed, depending on the season that we were in. I ran a card and gift shop. So depending on the season, I would have to change cards over, get the gifts out, all different kinds of things. I would try to have meals prepared, but there was a lot of times that there wasn't. And my husband would have to find something to cook for them when he came home or get takeout. My kids went from, me cooking dinner every single night of their lives to what are we going to eat now? The housework was just overwhelming. It was, 3 kids in a house, a dog, a husband. It's the amount of laundry and housework and just dust that accumulates over that time. And then constantly trying to bring help in and it not working out. Bills piling up. I had to handle all the financials for the house, handle all the financials for the business and, a new business. And while it wasn't a new business, I bought an existing business. It was new to us. So the expenses that we were incurring in it were different than the old established owner had, and trying to keep on top of those. And then family obligations, trying to have, just a marriage, trying to have conversations with my husband that didn't revolve around this business, the kids, like trying to just be us.
Yeah.
And have some sort of a normal life.
So I've owned multiple businesses. So, anybody that's an entrepreneur will tell you that you have to have a strong why in order to get through the shit, right? So it's always going to be bumpy at some point. But in order to have grit and persevere through, having a strong why it is said, that's really important. So why did you guys start that business?
So it was to it was so that we would be set up for when my husband retired, because he could retire relatively young and based on his job and the years that he's had in it. And my husband paints, he's an artist. So the goal was to bring his artwork into the store, run the business, and then sell his artwork while, we're selling everything else in the business. And then when he retired, we had this store to keep us going, because it was unrealistic to think he was going to be young and never work again.
Okay.
We never got to the point that we were able to do that, because I was constantly scrambling for help, to work in the store. So I was never getting to run the business because I was just working the business all the time.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you have this why. It makes sense logically, but it's not fitting into the puzzle.
Nope.
And everything around you is falling apart. Intuitively, there's nothing you can really pull from, because your gut's actually saying to you, you shouldn't even be in this.
Right.
How long does that business last?
A little around 4 years. And I knew that going in because I was assuming the lease.
Okay. So tell me about that.
So when we bought the business, it was in a shopping center. I assumed that I took the lease over from the former owner. So I knew that I could get out at a certain point if I needed to.
Okay.
Was I going to lose a ton of money if I got out? Yes. But I knew that the time was going to come. The lease was going to end. We were either going to leave or renegotiate it or move, whatever. But I knew that it could end at that point in time.
Okay. And so was there ever a point of time in that business that you felt satisfied or had any inkling of hope of like, maybe we're getting over a hump and this is going to work?
No.
Okay. So at the end of the 4 years, and does your husband see it too? Does he understand it?
So in the very beginning, no. In the very, very beginning, no. He's like so happy and excited about it. And the less I'm home, the less like that we have our lives that we were very much used to, the more he has to work all day, do kid stuff, and then a lot of the times come and meet me at the store to do things after hours. It got old really, really quick.
So was there a consensus between the two of you that this was not a good idea?
Not really. Not for a long time.
Okay, so tell me about that. Tell me about that.
So he really is much more optimistic. He was much more optimistic about it all than I was. And so what happened in the midst of, all of this disasterness, I'm coming undone. Right? Like I am like, what is happening? I am like losing my mind. I need some kind of help. So I decided, I got this voice inside of me that kept saying, if you could learn how to meditate, you'll be able to handle things better. And I listened and I found someone to teach me to meditate. And she also did energy work. She did Reiki. So I started to go regularly and get energy work and meditate with this person. And it started to teach me, oh, that's fear or that's my ego talking. This is my intuition talking. And we have to stop this. There's no pushing. Stop pushing. It's not happening. You don't even want it to happen. You have to let it go.
Yeah.
And the more that I was confident in myself and knowing that, then he would get on board.
So it's so interesting. I have a sign right here, this pink one, and it says, know your truth and trust your knowing. And I was just on a podcast a few weeks ago of a podcast that my dear friend Maria hosts. And it was all about women in business. And she said, what's your biggest lesson of having been a woman in business for so long? And I said, follow your gut. And she was like, what advice can you give? I was like, listen to your gut. And she said, what was your biggest challenge as a woman in business? And I said that I used my gut. You know, we as women we are tapped into our tuition a little bit more intrinsically and innately than guys. I'm not saying that men can't tap into their intuition. They certainly can, but they're just not really trained to do it. We really more inherently are. But every time I listened to my gut and I led by my gut in a male dominated business, I was basically told I was crazy because I had nothing to back it up. But here's the difference. Here's what I learned. And this is just a little side tangent. I got privy really quick to, and by the way, I was a female partner in a family owned business. These were not Joe Schmoes. This was my family. And I was still being told, no, this is crazy. So I started testing my theory. And I would go to other people, my director of operations, my director of marketing, come here. And we're going to go into this meeting and this is going to be the topic. This is the agenda, right? I have this idea. They're like, oh, it's fucking brilliant. And I was like, I need you to present it. And as soon as they presented it, that was it. Brilliant idea. I had to let my ego, you talk about ego, I had to let my ego go really fast because it really didn't matter to me to get the pat on the back for being the person to bring the idea forward. I just wanted what was best for the business, which I think is also a much more female approach to business, right? I didn't need the accolade, but I was constantly getting the whisper. You know, I think you were saying it's the softer but firm voice.
Yes.
For me, I knew it was fear because I would have anxiety in my system. You know, because really when you're telling your mind and your body something's fearful, it'll engage your vagus nerve and you're going to have an automatic response, right? And that autonomic nervous system where you're going to feel whatever you feel in fear. So either anxiety or you're going to sweat or your heart rate's going to go up or you're going to have a digestive issue. Like that to me, that's how I know the difference between fear and intuition because my whole system's off. The intuition is a whisper and it's consistent and it's constant until you can't ignore it anymore. And you know it, like when you get quiet, you're like, you hear it. Like that's how I became a coach. I had a whisper. Like I'd just be working in my other job and I'd hear, you're supposed to be a coach. You're supposed to be doing this. You really like this. Like it was more of like a dialogue. It was never like an alarm. Right?
Yes.
So you've shared with me you had this intuition. Is there a reason why you didn't follow it at the beginning?
At the beginning, my husband was never, wait, I just want to circle back 1 second to what you said about, feeling anxious in your body. You can still feel uncomfortable in your body, even if something is right for you, because it's unfamiliar, even though it's right for you, right?
Yes.
So you could still have those uneasy feelings and something can still be, your intuition and what's right for you. But as far as me not listening, I knew that he was never, ever, ever going to believe that it couldn't be amazing if we didn't go through it.
Okay.
And honestly, in all honesty, I knew that if I didn't do it, he was going to be resentful.
Okay.
And at that point in my life, I was like, what can I handle better? Can I handle me? Because I'm going to be resentful if I do it. Can I handle resenting him? Right? Because I know I don't want to do this. Can I handle resenting him better than I can handle him resenting me?
We got to sit with that for a second. Because how many people go through that where look, I talk a lot about prioritization and putting other people's needs first. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of a key example of it. It's, I know there's going to be resentment and disappointment somewhere. Where would I rather see it? In someone else, or I'll just swallow it? Now, have you ever, can you think of other times where you have put other people's needs ahead of yours in that type of way?
Nothing that, nothing on that level, nothing that big,
Okay.
you know, saying yes to like a family thing that I didn't want to do, you know, party, vacation, whatever. Nothing on that grand of a level.
So here we are. You've given it a go for 4 years. Your husband is now also being, what's the word I'm looking for? Like burdened by the business versus feeling fulfilled and excited and optimistic at some point.
Right.
So does it line up with the fact that you're looking at him and saying, dude, this lease is up. We're not re-signing. What was the risk there? How far were you in? Because this is kind of where we get to. I know when we closed our family business, it took 3 years to make that decision. Now, we had already been in business for about 12 or 13 years at that point. I always say we were collateral damage of the Lehman Brothers fallout. So a lot of small businesses took a hit when that Lehman Brothers crash hit. And ours was definitely part of the trickle down. And I could see it. You talk about intuition. I could see it clearly. We ain't coming out from this. The hole is too big in the ship. And I was called a Debbie Downer. I'm a worrier. I'm negative. And I was like, no, I'm telling you, this is not going to work. Like, we've had our good run. We should just be like, we did good when we had the opportunity. We had our good run. It's time to put this to bed. And I was told no, no, no. And then encouraged, manipulated, discouraged, whatever you want to call it, to keep dumping money in to keep it alive. And that's what we did. And so, and I'm sure that there was parts of you that were dumping money. Well, if we just put in more money and we turn it around and we turn it around. And I think at first I was like, I'm going to get that money back. But maybe after a year and a half, I was like, I'm borrowing money from Peter to pay Paul. This is a bad idea. I'm taking money out against my house. I'm taking money out against my 401k. What the fuck are we doing? But not only was I trying to say no to my dad, but also my husband was in the business and my dad's pulling my husband aside in the corner saying, I need more, I need more, I need more. And then he's coming home and saying, we need to, we need to, we need to. And I was like, fuck that shit. No. So now there's stress and friction there. There's stress with my dad. Like it was just a perfect implosion. The business finally closes and you're saying $300,000. If I had to total it all up, I think we're a little bit closer to 400. But the reality is that's a deep hole to pull out of. And there was tremendous shame attached because we were the people that never carried an ounce of debt. I never had a credit card debt. We paid off our student loans very quickly. Like we were so financially conservative personally, but we were literally hemorrhaging cash into the business. So when it turned around and the business ended up closing under duress, we were breaking a $10 million lease. Our lease wasn't up. That was one of the risks. Like, do we really break a $10 million lease? Do we really walk when we owe $3 million to this credit union? Like, this was big money that was all being personally guaranteed by the partners. So it was me, my brother, and my dad. And that, all those things considered, it was still a better idea to close the business at that point. But it had to take 3 years for people to get there. I was there much quicker. So I had a lot of anger and frustration because I felt like we ended up getting ourselves into a deeper hole than we needed to. But I could not pull anybody, no matter how I presented it, nobody was picking it up. So what kind of things were at risk? Like you were in a nice position, the lease was ending. You're like, this isn't good natural end position. I'm sure you had a lot of assets and money. And how did you guys make that decision? What were your playing factors in closing that business?
First of all, the knot in my stomach, just hearing your story, I want to like throw up.
I know.
Right.
Makes me want to throw up, by the way, all over again. Never been skinnier in my life. My cousin's like, you're so skinny. I'm like, it's the stress diet.
The stress. I knew that the lease, was coming up. It was going to end. And I was basically like, I am out. Like this is it. I am out. There was like a lot of things that weren't disclosed to us that should have been disclosed to us that weren't disclosed to us. There was some theft that went on. There was like a lot of things that went on. And so I basically was like, I am out. And I knew the landlord wasn't going to make a deal with me. But I was like, all right, I'm going to play. I'm going to go. Let's go. We'll ask them. We'll ask them, we'll stay, but we need our rent to come back down to here. I knew they weren't going to do it. And so we go and they're like, no, absolutely not. And I'm like, yes. So there had been a card and gift shop near our house, like basically in a shopping center right near our house. Our business was about 25 minutes from our house. So then we're like, okay, do we move it? And meanwhile, I'm like, I'm not moving it. I just know it, but I'm going to play. So then we go and we speak to the leasing company of the shopping center that's near our home. And I say to them, for me to come in here, I need this, 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 and this. And they're like, that's fantastic. And I'm like, oh God, all right. But if I do this, I'm near the house. Like at least like I can find people to work here versus I had such a hard time staffing the other business, the other location. So now they draw paperwork up and none of the guarantees are there. And I'm like, absolutely not. Absolutely not. That's it. Decision made. We close. We walk away. Now, I did the wrong thing when we closed and I listened to the wrong people. And I didn't liquidate fast enough. So I got stuck with a lot of product that I had to then store, that I had to then auction off. And that was a whole other nightmare in itself. But I was so happy to not be in that building every day, all day, 10, 15 hours a day, that I didn't care. I'm like, we will take the hit. I can always make more money. I can't make more time. Okay. And I'm losing time.
Can you just say that again?
Yes. You can always make money. You cannot make more time. You just can't.
I love that. And I think that is so powerful. And I remember that. And obviously your kids are part of this decision. I remember that I'm in the family business still, and I'm feeling very, very burnt out. And I had a 3.5-year-old at the time, and we were in the process of adopting a second child. And I remember looking at my husband and saying a similar statement, which was, I can outsource being the director of marketing for this company, but I cannot outsource being his mom. Nope. I'm trying and it's not fucking working. And it's kind of the same concept of like, you can't I can never replace me as his mom. You can hire a babysitter, you can hire a nanny, you can hire an au pair. It's not the same, right? You can't make time, but you can make more money. Now, Absolutely. Did you know that you were going to be losing so much money in that process?
Yes. So I knew how much we were in for, and I knew like, all right, I'm still going to be in for this amount when I close these doors. And we just were like, what it is.
Now, was it money lost or was it money that had to be paid?
both. Some was lost and some had to be paid.
Yeah, we were the same because a lot of the money we lost, I mean, this is the part that's really going to make you actually want to throw up. Like, let's just use the home equity line. When we borrowed against that home equity line to make payroll for everybody else, right?
Yep.
We weren't taking, you don't do that and then you don't take a dime. Like, you don't take a dime. So you're hemorrhaging and you're hemorrhaging, right?
Yep.
So here we are taking money out against the house to make payroll so our employees will be happy and stay and try to keep this thing afloat. But then when the business closed, I now had to start paying that back.
Yes.
So I've lost it. It's not like I used it to build equity for myself in my home or do what people do with a home equity line. So I lost it and then I had to pay it with interest.
Yep.
And then the other sticker was we took quite a bit out from our 401k and were not properly advised, as you discussed, and did not have the opportunity or knowledge to make as much of a payback as we had to, and ended up with like a 35% hit from the government. So not only did I lose that money as retirement, which I never used, I took it out and gave it to everybody else, but now I had to pay like $70,000 to the IRS. And you know, this was 10 years ago, and I can say, I mean, I can feel it right here as we're talking this story. It was the worst time ever. Greatest gift of my life.
And people think, right, mine too. And people are like, you're crazy, you lost all that money. And I'm like, it's just
fucking money. You know, I had a moment, and I can't wait to get into this part of it. So there was a moment, I think my kids were probably around the ages of 3 and 8. So the 8-year-old was at school. The 3-year-old must have been taking a nap. The business had closed. I said to my husband, it had been so stressful in my home for years leading up to that. We had so many, because it was a family business, so many family business meetings around the kitchen table in my home. First thing I did when the business was closed was actually go to my son's elementary school and let them know there's a lot of heavy conversations happening that we just don't have a place to have them in private. And my son's very privy to it, and it's very stressful. And God forbid if he should come here and start acting out or like showing a behavior that doesn't make sense, like, please don't reprimand him off the bat. Like, come to me, because there's a lot of shit going on, number one. But number two, I just remember saying to my husband, I can't go back to work quite yet. Like, I need to heal this family. We were so exhausted and so stressed. So instead of me going back right away, we just really tightened the belt and just did bare minimum on all things, utilities, food, like needs versus wants. We kept it really simple. But there was a time my anxiety and my panic was at a level I had never experienced it before. And I had been struggling with it for 20 years. I found myself on the kitchen floor sobbing because I had a deep realization that all my sense of security, all my sense of safety, all my contentment, all my happiness, all had to do with how much or how little of a piece of paper that I had. It's not something that's difficult to create. It's made on a machine. The government can print up as much or as little of it as it would like. Nobody has to go mining for it. It's not some great resource, right? That's scarce to get.
Yes.
And I remember thinking, I can shred it. I can chew it and swallow it. I could cut it with a scissor. I could light it on fire. I could disintegrate it in water, and I could flush it down the toilet. It has no fucking value. It's all esoteric. It's all nonsense. And I'm giving it so much control over how I feel, my emotional state, my mental state, my psychological state, and my physical state. And I'm not doing it anymore. And it was such a moment, it was such an epiphany. And I just thought to myself, because I knew we owed money to the government, I knew I had to pay back this home equity line. I knew it was going to be years and years and years of scraping, making money, and giving it out. Scraping, making money, giving it out. Not even getting the benefit of it, right?
Yep.
And I remember thinking it's going to be years till we have a level of money that makes us feel comfortable. And I better learn how to get real happy and real content and real peaceful and feel safe and secure in my body without it. That was the greatest gift. Because once you learn how to do that, it can never be taken away from you.
Never.
And that's the difference between internal and external power. So tell me, what were the gifts that you realized? And it's safe to say we don't realize at the moment it happens. Like, it takes a while to get to the other side to be able to see all the gifts in the challenge. What are the gifts that you got?
I really can learn how to do anything. I could do anything. And I kind of knew that about myself, but I don't know, it proved it to me. And people will say, well, your business failed. I don't look at it as that business failed. I look at it as I closed that business.
Love it.
And right. And like, while I didn't make money from that business, I learned so many things and met so many people. It also gave my husband and I and our kids a level of appreciation for each other that I don't know how we could have gotten it any other way. And let me tell you, I had a near-death experience that didn't give me that level of appreciation as it did when we had that store and being separated from each other for so long. It brought us, the five of us, together in ways that I can't even describe. It's just like so happy. Like, what teenagers are that happy to, like their mom made dinner? Like mom's at my show, mom's at my game, like whatever, mom's always here. But they were like, oh, mom's here. Like,
well, we were taking for granted all of the things that,
yep.
Right.
Yep. Oh my God, there's clean towels. The house is clean. Everything's put back together. There's groceries we like. It just brought this level of appreciation for each of us. It really did, that we didn't have before. And like I said, it really gave me this sense of, I can figure anything out. I can do anything. I can go and make money doing anything, anywhere. And I can trust me.
That's what I was actually thinking as you were saying that. You have self-trust.
Yeah, I can trust me.
I think people underestimate the value of that. And that's why I do have that sign that says, know your truth and trust your knowing. And what I always say is, you can know your truth, but it's believing it. It's trusting yourself that I find to be the hookup for a lot of people.
And I don't think that people realize that that's how you build confidence.
Yeah.
You have to be able to trust yourself. You have to be able to keep your promises to yourself and stop lying to yourself about yourself. Like, get real with yourself about you.
It's so funny because when you talk about that level of appreciation, I definitely saw that, and I'm really active on social media. And so one of the ways, really probably right after I'm calling that a breakdown when I was on my kitchen floor, because it was a breakdown. I was mentally, there was no part of me that was whole. Physically, mentally, emotionally, I was literally a shell of myself that I was going to have to pour into slowly every single day. I was probably running on 10%, and it was going to take a while for me to fill back up. And I had to get really creative. I had no money. So it wasn't like I could go hire a coach or go get some therapy. I didn't even have insurance. Like, I had nothing. And I live right outside of New York City. It is not cheap to live here. Like, it was a very precarious situation. I started this internal practice of gratitude where I would wake up and say thank you to myself. Thank you for another day. I would hear my kids fighting in the hallway. Thank you for the fact that my kids can get themselves out of bed by themselves and that they can have a voice and argue and have an opinion. And thank you for the fact that I can sit up and get my legs over my bed on my own, walk to my bathroom, go to the bathroom, walk down the stairs. And so I did that all day. It was like a pure 24/7 gratitude practice. Constant. It was on 24/7. And I remember writing something on Facebook, and I only remember it because I remember the reactions I got. I wrote something like, it's a good day today because I can walk down the stairs by myself. And people were like, oh my God, did you break your leg? And I was like, no. But I think we were taking for granted everything, every little thing. And I know for sure I took money for granted. And I didn't start to appreciate it until I had none of it. So I thought to myself, well, shit, I don't want to just be appreciating my life or appreciating my body or appreciating the fact that my children are alive until it's gone. I want to be appreciating it all day, every day while I have it. I mean, that scared the shit out of me. It really, really did. And I got into this deep gratitude practice, and then it turned into me putting on my phone an alarm every hour. And the alarm had different words on it. One of it might say, breathe, or what can you be grateful for, or look outside, or, sing a song or something, because things were very stressful. When you're pulling yourself out of that kind of hole, it's really stressful for a very, very, I would say a good 5 years it took. And the thoughts that would run through your head were not productive. So if I had this hourly alarm, I knew not only would it keep me rooted in that practice, but it would also break a thought if I was having a thought in that moment.
I had so many alarms.
So tell me what you did. Phone. Yeah. So what were you doing?
So at first I was just doing the dance of joy that I didn't have to go into that store anymore. So we closed the store in the spring. So it was like the Christmas time before. And I met a friend for coffee on my way into work one morning. And she's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm closing. She's like, are you going to get a job? And I'm like, eventually. I was going to take this big long break and figure it out and maybe hire a writer to write my resume. I didn't know what I was going to do. And her husband is an optometrist, and she's like, he needs help in the office. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. I don't know how to work. I never worked in a doctor's office. She's like, you never had a store before. Who cares? Just talk to him. So I tell my husband, we talk about it, whatever. I talk to, my friend, and he's like, come work for me. It's very just, work the desk. And I'm like, all right, it's very, very part-time. I can do it. I actually start training while I have the store, learning how to, handle all their systems and everything. Because of course, right? I can learn anything. I go in, I leave, I give the keys back on a Monday, and I go to work on Tuesday morning. There was no break, right? But it was so much fun in that office. And I loved my coworkers and my boss, and it was so easy. At first, all I was doing was, scheduling people and answering the phone. And it was so I could do it. It was great, whatever. And then I started to get bored. Like, I ran a business. I know what to do. I know where money's going out or this or that. So I started to learn everything.
Of course you
did. Until eventually, right? I mean, and I had no experience in this world at all. So now I learn everything. And now I'm the manager. Now I'm managing.
You and I are two peas in a pod. Yeah. This is how it's like, well, but we could be so much more efficient if we did it this way.
Right. And so now I learned everything, and now I'm managing the practice. But I am like, now it's not that fun anymore. I love my coworkers. I love my boss. Like, it is fun in there, but I'm like, something's missing. What's missing? And how am I going to figure it out? How am I going to figure out, like, I'm supposed to do something, but what am I missing? And again, I hear meditate. just be quiet and meditate. So I had started meditating in 2012 and I didn't make it a daily habit. I was meditating, getting energy work, but it wasn't a daily habit. And now 2017 comes and I've been in this working for the doctor for like since 14 or something like that. And, you know, I was doing things like you're saying, like, okay, breathe. I'm grateful for, but there was something missing. Like there was something else. What was I going to do with my life? And so I listened to that voice because I had learned to listen to that voice. And I was like, okay, what am I going to do? How am I going to make this a habit? I'm a big quitter. Like I joke that I was the ultimate quitter, that I actually, quit life for a couple seconds here, at one point. How was I going to make myself follow through on this thing that was just for me? Nobody else. It was just for me. And I didn't look at it like it was going to benefit the kids, my husband, anybody. This was just for me. And so I was like, okay, I have an out. My out is I only have to do this for 1 minute. I can do anything in the world for a minute. So I'm going to make myself a morning person and I'm going to do this thing in the morning, even though I'm a complete night owl. And I hear that people get stuff done when they do things in the morning. What's that like? What's it like to want to see the sun come up? And I made this deal with myself. Just do it. 1 minute. You just have to meditate for 1 minute, read for a minute, like just 1 minute. You don't even have to get up that much earlier. And that's what I started to do. And I started to spend all this time with myself, which is unsettling. It's not just, wonderful and great. It's also unsettling. All your stuff comes up, right? Like all these things that you didn't want to deal with will come up, and because you have to feel your feelings. You can't heal anything until you feel. And all these things started to come up, but all these people started to come into my life and opportunities started to come into my life because I was open to that happening.
Yeah.
But a lot of my practices were exactly what you're saying. Like I had alarms all the time on my phone, breathe. Another one was I love. And then that would come up and I'd be like, what do I love? What do I love about me? Or another one that I had was I see. And what was the first thing that I saw when the alarm went off? And how can I express appreciation for it? Like no matter what it was. And all these little things to help turn my mindset around to be a more positive, but realistic, not like fake toxic positive, just like what's going to make a difference in my life and make me feel better.
Yes. And I think I'm so glad you brought up toxic positivity because I read about it a lot. And there's this concept of like toxic positivity versus tragic optimism. And I feel like tragic optimism is my jam because that's kind of, when I say there's a gift in the challenge and a purpose in the pain, this is not me being like, every experience has tons of rainbows and unicorns. This is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is our greatest challenges are our greatest teachers. And out of great tragedy can come a great lesson. And so I really quickly went from, why is this happening to me with this victim mentality? I don't actually think I ever really was in that, to be honest with you, from the get. But this idea of why is it happening to me to why is this happening to me? So going from victim mentality of woe is me, why me, to why is this happening? What is it that I'm supposed to be getting from this experience? What am I supposed to be learning? And I think the biggest things I learned in my experience with losing that much money was my relationship with money, my relationship with my sense of safety and security and happiness. And where does that come from? Learning a deep gratitude practice. But within all of that, other things were unraveling in that experience. And I learned what real surrender looked like. And when I talk to people, when I talk to my clients about surrendering, I often use the story with them, which is there was something significant that happened within my family during this process. And it was truly unbelievable. It's the only way it was literally unbelievable. And I had my husband do some research to find out if it was true, and it was true. And I just was like absolutely blindsided. I just couldn't even believe it. And I had so much sadness in my heart, and I had so much anxiety about the situation. And then there was just a moment that was like, all you're doing is fighting what is. If you just surrender, this was the voice that I heard. If you just surrender and give it up, and I'm not religious, I wasn't raised with any religion, but it was almost like if you just give it up to God, if you just give it up to the higher power, if you just give it up to the experience, and you can lean back, you will be open to what it is you're meant to learn in this moment. And I heard this concept, like I was saying it to myself, so I know I was hearing it. And I literally was bawling my eyes out, sat in my bed, and just went like this, and just opened my arms up. And I said, whatever this is, I'm here for it. I'm not going to fight it anymore. And that to me is what surrender was. It was, we're constantly saying it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be going this way. That shouldn't be happening. This shouldn't be happening. And it was more like, well, it should be because it is. And I just went, okay, it is. I'm not going to fight it anymore. What am I supposed to learn? So what did you have that moment of surrender?
So, of course, that's exactly what you bring up and you're talking about. There's a term, and I'm going to butcher it because I'm not a yoga person, but I love Tosha Silver and her book, Outrageous Openness.
Yeah.
And in it, she talks about aparigraha, and it's grasping. It's like your fists are closed, and right? And so aparigraha is non-grasping. Open your hands. Let it go. Surrender.
This is exact. And I physically, literally opened my hands and released it.
And I did too. And I didn't realize how much of my life I was like walking around with my fists, my hands literally balled into fists, and muscling my way through every single thing I had to do. And when I was able to be like, okay, just, you can't receive if your hands are closed.
That's it.
Open them. Just open your hands, open your arms, open your heart, let it go. Stuff's going to happen no matter what. Stop fighting. Like, stop being so, I joke that resistance is like my middle name. I have to feel some kind of resistance, even, about things that I want. Now I know how to deal with it. It comes up, I feel it, and I'm like, oh yeah, old friend, get in the back seat. I'm driving. You're there. Like, I can't get anything if you are hanging on me.
You're in the driver's seat. I'm just here for the ride.
Yep.
I'm here for it. And it was such a moment. But I don't think I could have ever learned what that kind of surrender was like if I had not been through that experience. And once I learned how to surrender, I've been able to do it over and over and over again, because I can feel it. Just like you said, when you've got that clenched fist, even if it's not physically, you kind of know it. You're like, what are you really holding on to?
Yeah.
What
are you trying to control? Like, let go of the control.
And you know what? It's really hard for people to do that. And as a trauma coach and somebody who does hypnosis, control is a huge protective layer.
Of course.
And I would never ask somebody to let it go unless they feel safe enough to be able to let it go. But there's this constant sense of I'm not safe that causes people to feel like they have to control every single outcome. It's just not impossible. And I think the other thing I gained from that surrender is I'm not in charge of anything. I literally have no control over anything. And once I really surrendered to that, I was like, okay, I just felt like 1,000 pounds lighter. Did you feel that too?
Yes. And it's also why I make my bed every day. So like my greatest needs in life are like control and safety, right?
Of course.
Trauma, right? So I make my bed as soon as I get up. I instantly controlled something. Stuff can like go crazy the whole rest of the day. I know that no matter what happens in this world, I have control over that. I made that bed. I controlled it, right? So I get that little bump of control and safety, and there we go. Now I can like roll on with the rest of the day.
All right. So I have two questions for you.
Okay.
One is, was the gift bigger than the pain?
In the end, yes.
In the end, yeah. And then the other question is, would you do it all over again?
I'd do it all over again. You know what? If it got me to where I would.
This is it, and
I would.
This is what I'm trying to explain to people. It's really interesting when I'm having a session with a client, and usually there is some sort of major milestone, some sort of catalyst that, they keep going back to. Well, if this had never happened or that happened, or, they always go back to these pain points. Mm-hmm. I have all these different visualizations. I use a whiteboard a lot to help them tease it out. The moment that they can be like, oh shit, wait a minute. I'm like 3.0 version of myself, and I could have never gotten to where I am if I hadn't been through that. Whoa, wait a minute. Maybe that, like you said it, it was, I couldn't have gotten this particular thing without that particular experience. Like your kids could not have that level of appreciation if it hadn't been that painful.
Right. And I think that people, like, we look at stuff, right? We look back and we're like, I would never do it like this. I would never do it like that now. But we're looking back with who we are now. And that's not real. Because that's not who we were back then. That's why we didn't make the decisions that we would make now back then. So you have to like, just be like, okay, that was that version of me. And now I've grown and I evolved and and it's okay. Like everybody makes mistakes. It's okay.
Well, I hate the words mistake and failure. It's just you tried and it didn't work.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
You tried and it didn't work. Can you try it differently?
Or sometimes I don't even look at it like it didn't work. It just didn't turn out how I thought.
Right. It didn't fit the plan I had in mind for it, but it actually turned out exactly the way it was supposed to
be. And it always does, right? Like I truly
the surrender
believe,
too.
Yeah. Like you can't miss what's meant for you. You just cannot miss out on what is meant for you. It keeps coming back until you get it.
Yes. Oh my God. We could talk. I remember the first time you and I met, I was like, we should just have our own podcast show, just ourselves. Because, we get it. We make, so I want people to be able to get to hear more from Deborah. Let me tell you what she does. She's a coach. Well, she's a lot of things here. She's a Reiki master. She's certified meditation teacher. She's a coach. She helps people facilitate change. She supports women as they figure out the next steps in their lives. I think she's pretty qualified to do that. She helps people shine a light on possibilities and illuminate what they may not see for themselves. She educates women so they're able to differentiate between fear and intuition. And that knowledge empowers them to make choices and decisions from a place of alignment instead of obligation or expectation. So if that jams with you, you need to reach out to Deborah. So Deborah, her website is deborahAttella.com. And if you're watching this on the video and it's not in the show notes, I just want to type out the website for you guys. It's Deborah is DEBORAH, Atella, ATELLA.com. And if you go to her website, she has a free 20-minute call. So I would highly recommend that you guys take her up on that. And if you want to follow her on Instagram, it's just her name. Again, Deborah Attella. And if you go to Facebook, she's Deb Attella. And I don't know. I mean, this was amazing. I could do it all day.
Me too.
It is a great example that there is a gift in every challenge. There's purpose in every pain. And I think one of the greatest gifts is just being open to knowing that.
Absolutely.
Right? Right.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I always like to close out, or I often like to close out some resourcing for people that are listening, mainly because I know when I went through my financial challenge, and that really was my last breakdown, right? I've had 2 major breakdowns in my life, and that was the second one, hopefully the last, but you never know. And it couldn't even fathom spending money on working with a coach. I just couldn't afford it. And so it was all about YouTube, and Oprah Winfrey and Deepak had these free 21-day meditations that I did every day. And it was podcasts and it was books, and it was either low cost or really no cost resourcing until I could gather the money to go see the coach I wanted to see. So, when I was going through that experience, the book that actually hit me the most at that time was Brené Brown's Daring Greatly. I feel like it was the catalyst. It was the book I needed in that moment. And I ate it up like the best piece of chocolate cake I've ever had. Spoke to me on so many levels. Tell me, what was a free or low cost resource that you could recommend that maybe got you through this time or another challenging time?
So I actually mentioned Tosha Silver's Outrageous Openness. That book is absolutely incredible. She used to have a bigger presence on Instagram and it got hacked. She is on Facebook though. And also just the same thing as what you're saying is like just Insight Timer, the app Insight Timer is a free meditation app. And I had put it on my phone, and you can just use the timer, or there are thousands and thousands of meditations, guided meditations ranging from like 2 minutes on. So you don't have to, sit for a long time, but there's also talks on there. There's not just meditation. So there's different things that you can listen to inspire you, to help you get out of your own way. So you just like, as you said, they're all over YouTube as well. But I really love that app, Insight Timer.
I might add that to my phone. So awesome. Well, this has been just such a pleasure. And if you like this podcast, please subscribe, share it, save it, tell a friend about it. The more subscribers, the better. We can spread the word so people don't feel so stuck. And all of our podcasts can be found wherever you catch your podcasts. I tend to use Castbox and Spotify. I don't have an Apple phone. Where do you catch your podcasts, Deborah?
Mostly on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
All right, perfect. So this podcast is there. You can grab it. It's called Flip That Shit. And until next time, guys, thanks so much for listening.